Thank you very much. We do have time for questions, so if... is this my file?
Left button, hold it closer to the screen.
Yes. Oh, that was loud. Yeah.
This is for anyone who wants to answer. What would have probably been the reaction if it was not a white man that shot him? Do you think it would have been different if an African American cop had shot Michael Brown?
Can you repeat the question?
Would it have been any different if the police officer had been black, had been African American?
I would imagine it would be one of the many stories we just don't hear, because the officers shooting suspects occur every day. So I don't think we would have heard much of anything.
Can I add to that? On page 4 of my handout, it gets down to basic data. How many police killings are there in America? We don't know. It's not a statistic that our government keeps track of. Now, we know how many shark attacks there are, but we don't know how many police killings there are. So we need to know more data.
Along with the implicit attitude, I know how you said that it's like a white teacher treating a black person differently, but would you also say that it's like a black kid thinking about himself? Like, this is how people look at me, so this is how I'm going to act. And I feel like that, I know I've got a lot of friends. We had a club at my school for only African American boys, and it was to help raise their confidence and say that they could make something of themselves. And I feel like a lot of the race issues couldn't change unless the attitude of like a black man or a black woman looking at themselves changes. I know black people who say they're racist against black people, and it's just crazy to think about.
I hear what you're saying. When you deal with the African American identity, there is some conflict with trying to establish what being African American, being black actually means, and some of that does deal with the academic part of it. So I do agree slightly that if an African American says, as a part of my identity of being a male or man, I'm going to succeed, it'd be beneficial. The other part of that is that the teacher has to realize that because of his particular experiences or background, he's going to need specific things from her. If she goes into it, or he, the teacher, goes into it with the attitude that because he's a black male, he needs this, or he's going to act this particular way, then even if he says he wants to succeed, he's going to fulfill her particular expectations. There isn't anything that suggests that when you deal with African Americans that they actually have this belief that they don't want to succeed in academics. That generally isn't the case. They do want to succeed, and they do want to succeed. And I understand that they have to come up with something, but the response from the teacher still she has to be aware that she can hold the attitude that he can only do so much, so she doesn't give that back to him.
I meant more or less the attitude of someone of this, like thinking of themselves. I know people who just think that like, I'm never going to move up in my life because of my status, and not even just education, it's anything, job, education, social status.
Well, that just in general, for America in general, that's an issue in general. And so by definition, it's going to be a little bit more spotlight on the African American experience. Being able to overcome whatever obstacle you're dealing with, being able to work hard to get this particular thing. So that's, in America in general, that's an issue. So by definition, because African Americans are the minority too, that's going to be a greater issue.
And an analogy would be women thinking they won't do well in math and science because they're women. And there are female students whose scores plummet once they hit high school in math and science because they just feel like they're not capable. And they've accepted that as part of their identity. Instead of fighting it and saying, I'm going to show you how good I can be at math and science and overcoming all those obstacles.
We have lots of questions. We may run out of time. Most of us have business cards up there where you can contact us. If we don't get around to you, we're going to try to get to as many people as we can.
I know this is a racial issue, but one thing that has really this issue has really hit home for me, police violence, and that's an issue that is particular. It's not just black people, it's Latino people and gay people and all these categories. And it just, does it seem, we were also talking about like collective action. Does it seem like giving police different ways to try to handle crises is becoming part of the conversation? Great, I haven't heard anything about that.
Can I speak to this for a second, guys? There's a lot of debate happening nationally about what that means to be a police officer, what it means to protect and serve, and there's a big dialogue that's happening nationally. Seattle Police is sort of one of the examples that people are looking at right now. They've totally altered the way that their police interact with people, and they're trying to take a more peaceful approach. I mean, globally, we've been looking at Great Britain. They don't carry guns. So they don't have any police death from guns because they don't carry them. And chaos hasn't ensued, so there is a lot of dialogue that's happening about it. And I would say one thing that I didn't get a chance to talk about in the history of St. Louis, a lot of the problems with our police forces in St. Louis come down to, again, that separation of city and county and the creation of municipalities. And these municipalities are all funded from tax dollars. And when you've got a lower tax base like you do in Ferguson, Darren Wilson was actually from Jennings originally, and he was fired with the entire police department to establish trust with their black community. So he came to Ferguson, and we have so many examples of police officers that have just been passed around for this racial discrimination, and they end up because they're cheaper, and so there is a discussion that is currently happening, but that's a hard, I mean, I don't know if I have the exact answer to that except to keep talking about it and get involved and get active and continue that conversation. Another thing, Ferguson Police Department had dash cameras. They just weren't installed. They were sitting in boxes in the basement. And just recently, there was a shooting that happened that was not related to one of the protests. The officer was wearing our brand new vest cameras. It wasn't turned on. And so it's like, it's frustrating, incredibly frustrating. But the only thing I can tell you is get active, find organizations, get your voice heard, keep pushing. And if there's enough people who push, we can see a cultural change.
I have a son who's been involved with the police more than he should. And y'all know what I'm talking about. And when I saw that mother, Michael Brown's mother, and they shot a boy and they left him on the ground for all that time. So I closed my eyes and I thought about my street. And if all these vehicles were there, and if I was sitting outside and they shot my boy, and for hours, he just laid on the ground and I couldn't touch him. How can anybody not see that as inhumane? How can anybody not see that as wrong? I don't understand why people don't. 4 hours, the person you love most, right there, dead, and you can't touch them. Not while they're warm, not if they happen to have a breath. How can that possibly be misconstrued?
Can I speak to that? There's an Esquire magazine article titled "The Body in the Street," which deals exactly with that. And I've been haunted by that article, "The Body in the Street," because the body was left there, as you say, for 4 to 4.5 hours. And the article makes the point, that's what warlords do. That's what you see in dictatorships. It was intolerable psychologically to the people who were right there. And I think it accounts for some of the response.
And I can tell you from being in those Ferguson town hall meetings that are Ferguson only, that is one of the major points that keeps getting brought up. It's what people are saying. It's what people are talking about. It is.
It's unconscionable. I'm appalled, and I can't believe anyone, regardless of their skin color, wouldn't see that as wrong. Wrong.
First of all, thank you guys for creating this panel and doing all this for all of us here and presenting your opinions. I'm very serious about that on a personal level. I really appreciate it. So, my question to you guys is, how do you recommend someone? I'm a 24-year-old lesbian woman in the St. Charles community, and I feel like my outlets for participating in panels such as this, or I don't know, how do you suggest that I get more involved in gaining perspective on what's going on in Ferguson?
Heal St. Louis. Heal STL. It's all over Twitter. Look it up. There's actions. There's nonviolent demonstrations. There's a weekend of activities happening this weekend, just to name one thing.
And I believe Michael talked about Antonio French before. His Twitter feed, like I was just on there last night, and he has links to ways that you can get involved and get active. There's so many things that you can do. So they are available, and if you want to like email me or Michael, we can get you connected to some of those things.
Hi, just really quick. My heart hurts. I believe that society, if not pushed to learn and understand the events that happen in history, we're doomed to repeat it. And not understanding the amount of control that the police force has and the amount of control that we as a society together can have over changing things is just crazy. Like, I live right next to Ferguson, 5 miles to be completely honest, and I go down there quite often. I have to travel through it, and it's crazy. I go and I see all these buildings, and they have they have wood all up on their windows, and things are saying, yeah, we're still open, and and the other day with a friend, another white girl, we went there and we wanted to pay our respects to the thing on his road. I forget the word. And we were scared, not because of all the violence that was going on, but also because we are 2 white girls who feel like we are targeted as people who are racist. And I believe that it goes both ways. And like I said, when we experience history, and we are a part of it right now, if we do not understand it and we don't push it in the future, it's going to be targeted towards everyone. It is not just towards, Black or Mexican, everything. There are people who feel like we are racist, and I'm not racist.
Can I just speak to one of the things that this young lady said? Just to encourage you, I was with 3 white girls who walked down to that apartment complex, and I'm really ashamed to say that I've lived my whole life in Ferguson and did not realize how segregated we were until I started seeing all this. I found out that I live in a white neighborhood. I was not aware that there were white and black neighborhoods in Ferguson. There are. And I'd say that you have to be careful. You have to look and see what the climate is and what the environment is, unless you're totally one of those people that is prepared to get arrested. But it's perfectly safe to walk down to that memorial area and to pay your respects. So don't be afraid to do that. And one of the things that I have written down that I didn't say, one of the biggest points of conflict in Ferguson right now is that people, you talked about understanding. People are not listening and understanding the Black experience. There are 2 Fergusons being debated. There's the white Ferguson experience and the Black Ferguson experience. And until we can acknowledge that that Black experience is legitimate, that it is not imagined, that it is not made up, that it is wrong, we're not going to move past this. So I think that speaks to what you were saying.
Just a quick one. I do recognize that all white people aren't racist. I think typically with African Americans that's recognized. The situation that you're dealing with right there, to be honest, it is an immediate response because of what Grace mentioned, the experience that African Americans tend to have. It's a protective device that we tend to have because we're not aware who actually is for, with, or against us. We don't know. If I go on the stlouistoday.com and just read the post on any random story, and I have it right now so I know it's there. There was a shootout downtown, and the first comment was, I guess those were protesters. See, I don't know if that's your perspective or not. So my immediate wall is, I'm just gonna, hey, I gotta treat you like, really in essence how I feel like you're treating me. So I understand that, but it's still the acceptance of the implied idea. It's a response to how we tend to see things, we meaning someone African American.
And also racism isn't always it's not an individual level anymore. Like I said, I was not aware that I was living in a segregated area, but that is, I mean, if you looked at, when I purchased my house, I looked for black neighbors and I saw them and I thought I'm good. Then, I looked at the map and I said, no, I'm in a white area. Part of being a responsible white person, right, is recognizing racism in your own actions when you're not aware of it and changing it. So a lot of that is implicit, recognizing it and acknowledging it and changing it.
Can you all stay a little bit longer, or you have class? Okay, so I know it's cutting time close to time, but we have more questions. So if anyone can stay, we can stay and discuss this. I know we have.
Would you say that the ice bucket challenge was on purpose and a distraction?
No, I think it was just a happy coincidence that both were occurring at the same time. I think the Ice Bucket Challenge was a different event, but it just happened at the same time. And they were very similar. That was interesting.
I just wanted to make a comment. First of all, I'm an American citizen of Indian origin, and as such, a more recent immigrant than most of you. And I bring a perspective that makes me an Indian American and a psychologist. So we have zoomed into Ferguson and we heard our my esteemed colleagues and students here with their perspectives. And if you zoom in, there are a lot of solutions that give us a short-term strategy to solve this. But if you zoom out, historically these tensions existed. It'll continue to exist if you only focus on Ferguson. But if you look at it as a relationship issue and not harbor tensions, but focus on the relationship, there are two sides to any stories, or more sides than two. And if we hear each other out, there's a context to everything. And people behave in ways because of the context. And sometimes people come and tell me, oh, that didn't happen to me. And I said, I always said, but it did happen to me. It could be because who I am and how I'm perceived. So perceptions, context, relationships are all important. And if you don't work on that, there won't be any long-term solutions. 1917, you read something from that period. And it seems like it's happening today. Why? Because we fix things. We don't try to find long-term solutions, which is harder. And if we think this is hard, let's start right now before we start trying to fix things around the world when we can't even fix racial relations here. And that's what I'm working on.
I wanted to respond to something Tobias said. My son is Pakistani, half American. He was raised in the Islam faith. And so he fell in love at 17 with this cute little white girl. And when he met her parents, that was the end of that relationship. And he was devastated. And so my son looks like a terrorist, and he gets questioned on airplanes all the time not to use the bathroom. Somebody might see him. So I hear you on that one. My other concern is when I talk to my students, my friends, my peers, my family, and we discuss the 53 police officers and 3 of them are African American, all of them say, you know what? why don't those young black men and women become police officers? And then they can take care of their own city and yada, yada, yada. And my response is always, there is such a distrust in the police department in America. Why would any African American youth want to pursue that career? When they don't trust them, when they're treated badly, when they have most of them have not much positive things to say to the police department, why would they want to pursue that as a career? So I think that needs to change, so that our young people can say, yes, I want to protect and I want to serve.
Okay, so I'm a psych major, and I realized that I'm almost 19, and it's not about racism, or it's not about equality of marriage, and it's not about, oh my gosh, I'm Catholic, oh my gosh, I'm Islam, oh my gosh, I'm black, oh my gosh, I'm white. It's none of those stereotypes. It's because we grow up in a system. Our parents, our grandparents, they educated us. It's the whole nature versus nurture thing. And I myself am gay and very open-minded. I don't judge someone based on religion or based on what their skin color is. It's not about that. It's what they bring to the table. History repeats itself over and over and over again because it's what we're taught. We're taught about these things. So if we want to change history, it only takes one person, one voice, to change everything. Just like Martin Luther King did. He changed everything based on his belief, and he had people listen. So instead of sitting behind a computer or watching television, fight for what you want. Fight for what you stand for. Fight for what you want to happen. Not just say, oh yeah, I want racism to stop. Stand up and speak. Use your words. That's all that I have to say.
I just had a question. Do you think that PC and the standard that we're supposed to approach each other has anything to do with it? Because living here for 10 years, I noticed it's not so much full-out direct racism as it is racial paranoia of each other.
What was your question?
I just think that, do you think that PC has anything to do, like as how we treat each other, has anything to do? It seems more of a separatist view if, I'm white and this is how I am and this is how you're supposed to talk to me, and this person's black and this is how you're supposed to talk to them.
Are you talking about being politically correct?
Yes, PC.
I'll actually talk about this. I'm not sure there is, I blew through the data very quickly, first part of the spiel, but this data is real. The reality of the relationship between African Americans and police is real. They get pulled over more, they get stopped more, they get searched more. So, this is real. This is not an imaginary problem. And I love Marvin's, Professor Tobias's argument about implicit biases and implicit. I think it's a much nicer way of looking at it, because I don't think there's anything intending to be. I'm sure there are a few, but most police officers, there's no intention to do this. You have this implicit biases there. But it's not a political correctness thing. I really think it's an issue of, this is the reality of being black, and a black man, especially in America.
May I interject? I think there are some PC types of assumptions in how the media portray things. I watched Channel 2, 4, and 5 conventional corporate news in those first few days, and very rarely did they talk to somebody from Ferguson. They're not hard to find. Who did they talk to? They talked to the authorities. They talked to representatives from traditional organizations like the NAACP. They were too in touch, I think, with the traditional networks of power, which is why I try to emphasize alternative media. Who gets to tell the story? And with corporate media, it's the traditional voices of authority, not what's actually happening in the field. They didn't talk to too many people from Ferguson on one of the stations. They talked to one pregnant lady who'd been roughed up by police. Other than that, they just talked to authorities. I think that's PC.
I just have a quick comment. To the individual that, I guess, it is up to what they call the millennial generation is exposed to more technology. They tend to interact more with diversity. So a lot of the ideas and a lot of the biases that are portrayed out in the media that we tend to passively accept, I think that as we get more and each generation starts to be more involved and engaged, it will hopefully start to decline. When it comes to PC, I have a slight bias because when I do engage with debate with individuals, typically when they say PC, they're going to say things that aren't always factually correct. So I have no problem with people feeling like they're telling it like it is, as long as you're actually right in what you're actually telling like it is. So, just for example, recent in Ferguson, I got into a debate with someone because they said the problem with the black community, just keeping it real, the problem with the black community is that you have all these single moms and all these dads bail, you have all these moms have too many kids and you get your hand out. That's the problem, that's keeping it real. I'm not gonna be politically correct. I said, I appreciate you keeping it real, but the facts are actually slightly false. And that's fine. If you come at me and say, I'm gonna be politically correct, like, come real, come with your assumptions and beliefs, and we can talk, and I can tell you whether it's false, you might be able to educate me, but even that allows a dialogue. So I do understand, but when I hear it, I'm like, oh, somebody's gonna tell something they just heard that they might have just read somewhere, that might not be true. So that's just, talk it like you feel it, say it like you mean it, and we can engage. I'm not gonna get upset. That's just me.
And when I hear being politically correct, I think you're censoring yourself.
Thank you.
Rather than maybe coming to a better understanding and being civil with somebody, you're watching your P's and Q's so you don't say the wrong thing.
That's exactly what I mean, and that's what I see a lot, you know, and I mean, some of the things I hear from my friends is just craziness, and I mean, on both ends, you know, it's just a different environment, and I've been working in the labor department, you know, industry for the last 10 years, so, you know, hands-on, there's like, my first week was just breaking down the shield of some, you know, my now friends.
And I think that's what we're doing here today, is just asking you to seek information, genuinely, you know, just ask us questions. Ask each other questions.
Okay, so first I'd like to express my admiration for that initiative, because I think school and educational institutions in general are that place that is outside of the domain of the political propaganda and the media bias, where really truthful, open discussions on social issues can be held. And what fascinates me the most about the Ferguson case is, of course, it is extremely terrible that segregation and racial notion that is attached to it. But what fascinates me the most is the easiness with which police officers pulled the trigger against civilians. And for a country that was founded upon the basis of liberty, for me that's really something that deserves to be addressed by the American community.
Yeah, I'm actually, one of the things that was so surprising, I heard police officers tell me that's how we're trained. We're trained, you know, and just shoot and empty your gun, and
there's been
a training issue, yes.
And there's been a major shift, too, in how police officers have been trained since the war on drugs. And that's where a lot of this militarization of the police comes from, is from the war on drugs. It's literally a war that is now happening in the streets, except it leads to a redefinition of what is the purpose of the police. Is it to view every citizen as a potential criminal, or is it to protect and serve? That definition, there is a big discussion, a big debate going on about that. No, I mean, I'm as a Ferguson resident, I'm grateful to have police in our area. I want the police to protect everyone equally, And I want them to realize that Black Lives Matter. But I don't want to get rid of the police. It's nice to have somebody who comes 911.
I actually just moved here from Kentucky maybe a couple weeks before the Saturday that the shooting happened. So I got to, I went to a high school. I know that Kentucky is classified as a hip state, and some of them are. But I went to a high school where it was predominantly white people. There was maybe a group of 10 African American people and maybe 1 or 2 people of another race. And I wanted to say that what that girl said about the whole nature nurture effect, I think is very true. I mean, most of the people that I went to school with, it was the ideas that their parents filled into their head of these racist ideas, and the whole, you know, a lot of the African American guys that I went to school with of wanting to find a girlfriend in the school, and they couldn't because the girls' fathers were so against it. And I'm wondering if, you know, as these generations go by, can we begin to teach children to get these ideas out of their head and maybe solve these problems by trying to fill their heads with something besides racism? Because it's half the problem, I feel like, goes with parents teaching their kids that this is the right way to think.
You make a good point. Education is absolutely the key.
I am so thankful for the millennials. Millennials get a bad rap, and I technically am one of those, but I'm at the earliest stage of those. 1983, starts in 1980, so it's not accurate to just dismiss the youth in America. This generation is being completely entitled. And in addition to teaching your children, it's absolutely necessary for you to get politically active, to vote. The 18 to 29-year-old population, I think recently they were polled and only 5% of them said they were planning on voting in this upcoming election in November. I don't even think half my students know there's an election coming up in November. This is where you can make a difference. You can vote for the legislators. You can demand that the legislators pursue the policies that you want. So it is on an individual basis, but get active.
I just want to stress one particular thing. When people do the nature nurture, because just like some psychology, typically what happens when babies are born, they're going to categorize within the first 2 years. They're going to classify and categorize based on what they see. We know that for a fact. Not going to change that. I think that I do agree that it's based on what the parents are teaching them, but it goes beyond that. Because if the parents are simply saying everyone's equal, everyone's amazing, everyone's great, it kind of diminishes the importance that some particular culture may have. So it's not so much everyone's equal, it's that particular person that you see, do you see that they're African American? Yes, I do. Then what you have to do is you have to instill in them, because of this particular idea that African American, the news is going to put out this thing that they're negative. It's not a situation when you want to force people to literally say because someone looks different, we're all the same and no one has a different past. It's recognizing that people might be different, and that doesn't mean that there's a deficit. Then that's personal opinion. That's what you want to stress, because I know they're going to classify, I know they're going to categorize, but you don't have to put something negative with that categorization. And that's what I think a problem.
You also have to understand that it's not just the parents who are teaching children, it's culture, society that has a profound influence. You can do, and I'm not a parent, but I know parents can attest to this, you can instill a value in your children all day, every day, talk to them about it, and if their friends aren't doing it, you know, it's a very challenging situation. So it's not just a simple black and white, we teach our children that this is wrong. They're learning from everything, media, everything that's being inundated and sent their way.
And I'm going to add a theory, a sociological perspective called contact hypothesis, which kind of rains on the parade a little bit, because it's saying what you're saying. It's saying, yes, we do want to reduce prejudice and discrimination, and here's a strategy. And one is to start with young people, but they have to be of equal status. So this goes to what Grace was talking about, what's going on in Ferguson. There's already economic inequality. So if I don't hate you because you're black, now I hate you because you're poor. You just happen to be poor and black. So until we have more equality in all areas, we're going to find another reason to continue to hold prejudiced attitudes. So the first thing is that we have to be of equal status to begin with, which is hard to do in our society because we are so stratified. Then we have to both agree that we want this. You and I both want prejudice and discrimination to go away. If I'm interacting with somebody who's okay with their prejudiced attitudes, I'm not going to change those. And then we have to work together and cooperatively to achieve those goals. So if we could do those three things, eliminate status inequality, share some goals, and get there together cooperatively, then we can do this. But there are so many additional obstacles in our way. Race is just one of them, that it becomes overwhelming and very difficult.
Well, I think we're winding down. I've got maybe one more question, and then
I'm going to have to go. I'm sorry to bail, but I have to go to office hours.
Okay, so if we're going to have one more question, then we'll all be around for comments too.
It's more of an interjection than a question. Earlier, she spoke about, I think it was, I don't know your name, with the red hair.
Me?
Yeah, you spoke about gun control in Great Britain, about how police officers don't carry firearms. Firearms are just another tool, but it's just how you use it. A screwdriver's a tool. I can stab you with a screwdriver. You can fix a door. You can drive a car, or you can kill somebody. It's all in how you utilize it to win that action. It's just the utter disregard people have for human life. Just everybody's so quick to shoot each other or kill each other, rather than what happened to the playground and you just settle this or talk it out.
And you know, it is about training too. Like when police officers are not trained to shoot to wound, they're trained to shoot to kill. But I will say it's a lot harder to shoot someone and kill them if you don't have a gun.
Okay, we got more. We can both have a conversation, but I think if anyone needs to leave, I just want to thank you all again for coming.